I think the mood of the modern world, the mood of modern Instagram, I've observed, is all about, well, ditch them, chuck them, run away. It's a pure pathology. You are sticking around someone suboptimal for purely pathological reasons. That's got to be true in some cases. It is definitely true in some cases. But because it's so well known nowadays that that's true, let's stick up for the other side. Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes we stick around very challenging situations because we want to try and grow together. We want to try and make progress. And sometimes we can, sometimes we can't. So, it's a balance. I don't want to advocate, an endlessly unfulfilling relationship, but good relationships will be marked by a heavy dose of what psychotherapists call rupture and repair, a break and a repair. And the ability to, the thing crashes at night, but the next morning it's fixed. Our friends in the East, the Japanese tradition of kintsugi, fixing that bowl with golden lacquer, fixing the break. It's a very, very important and satisfying part of all relationships. That's okay. Let's bear with how difficult it is. Again, I'm frustrated by the modern tempo, which is like, get out, shoot the awful person, and join the liberated uplands. Maybe, and maybe that is what they're going to do. But, let's be very thoughtful about why they've ended up there. Let's not, this might just be, they might find 100 things in life quite easy. This is what they're finding difficult. And let's acknowledge that. Let's be very kind to that. And let's hold their hands through it. Why? What's difficult for them? Is it that they think that they'll be judged by other people, right? What's the fear? What's the fear? I'll be judged by the people. Okay, good. How does that fear stack up with what might really happen? Or I'll never meet anyone new. Okay, let's think about that. Let's not immediately say, oh, you will. Well, maybe they won't. Let's take it calmly, etc. I'm really resistant to some of this narrative, which is, get out, get rid of the awful, underperforming people, and get into that golden relationship that's been promised to you in heaven. It's not, that may be the direction of travel, but let's just acknowledge the bumps.
Yeah, I think it's unrealistic. There's a lot of people who just don't want to make a fuss. That there's this sort of fear, this question, is it fair to want what I want? You mentioned before, how do people that from the outside, you go, why her with him? Why him with her? Why would that union happen? And we don't get to choose what we love in many ways.
Absolutely not. We think we've done away with the arranged marriage. No, we haven't. It's just become an emotionally arranged marriage, internally arranged, rather than arranged by our parents.
Yeah, I think, again, for the cerebrally predisposed, you kind of rail against that. Why can't I? If only I could. Can you not get in line with you? Yeah. Please, all of the things, they're there in front of me. They have the...
And we get literally irritated. And just to be able to understand, it's like saying, why can't Mount Everest be smaller? Why can't the sky be less blue? Whatever. We're trying to change a constituent element of reality.
Yes.
And I think we need to have as much respect for the inner architecture as we do for the outer architecture. You wouldn't look at a building and go, I just want to get rid of that wing immediately. You'd understand that it was incredibly difficult. It's the same thing. Just because it's intangible doesn't mean it's not incredibly stubborn and hard, it's hard to change.
Do we need to create the capacity to give up on people? In that way, does that help?
Yes, I think some of us do. Again, life's all about finding what's the lesson that you need to hear. So there are some people, not everyone, but some people really need to hear a little lesson about how sometimes they should give up on people, that sometimes making excuses for people or trying to understand where people are coming from, etc., it can go too far. That those very nice traits can go too far, and that the next best thing that you need to do is to be able to say goodbye without too much regret. That might be the lesson that you need to do. And let's remember, the people who, on the whole, find it very hard to give up on people are people who couldn't give up, as children can't, on parents who are very unsatisfactory. You can't expect a 5-year-old child to give up on a parent. So a parent can be beating the child every night, and the child will think, oh, maybe it's my fault, because the child cannot bear to give up on the parent and do the thing that would be natural to do, which is to say, I'm in the hands of an abusive parent. You can't do that when you're 5. You've got no access to lawyers, you've got no money, you can't go anywhere, you are trapped. And therefore you become a world expert in not giving up on people. But some of what adulthood requires is precisely the opposite, sometimes.
Getting perilously close to people pleasing here, and that sort of tendency to put other people's emotions ahead of our own, make their emotional state our responsibility. If you're not okay, I'm not okay. How can we better alchemize that and understand that tendency?
I mean, look, let's remember, so the psychology of the so-called people-pleasing person is someone who no one tried to please for themselves, right? In other words, they were in an asymmetrical relationship, probably with a caregiver or parent, who didn't care about their feelings, they didn't prioritize their needs, etc. And they had to adjust to them. So, if you've got a parent with a volcanic temper where anything might set them off, well, what you say or think is going to disappear completely, because all you're going to be doing as a child is managing the mood of a parent. They will be an infant, essentially, and you will have to be in the parenting role, and you'll have to put aside your needs. And children are great geniuses at reading the room and doing what needs to be done to survive. It's a survival strategy. I will become a people pleaser, not in order to annoy people in later life, but in order to survive, in order to get to the next stage of existence, in order to reach adolescence, let's face it. And the problem in this, as in so many other neurotic structures, is a very good idea outlives its use. And so it's still operating in circumstances where it's no longer needed. So what we need to tell, what the people pleaser needs to tell themselves is, it was amazing that at the age of 5, I cleverly worked out that I needed to people please in order to cope with my intemperate father. But that situation's now gone. And if I keep doing this with my partner, with my colleagues, etc., it's going to annoy everybody and it's going to create serious problems. So what needs to be done is that person shouldn't feel shamed. They should be made to feel proud. There should be a little ceremony where they're able to say to their 5-year-old self, thank you, little whatever it is. Thank you for carrying me to a later stage and working out something so clever. And this applies for all defensive neurotic structures. I mean, let's imagine somebody who can't feel very much, who's invulnerable, doesn't open themselves up to other people. And in relationships, that person may be shamed. Oh, so-and-so, they're afraid of intimacy. You want to go, okay, shaming this person's not going to help. You have to ask another question, which is, in what circumstances did their current behavior make sense? First question. And it always will make sense. You go back in time and you say, right, in those circumstances, of course it made, your father was dying, your mother was absent. Of course it made sense not to feel anything. You would have been destroyed by your feelings. Therefore, very clever 5 or 6-year-old you to work out that it's best not to feel. Problem is, you're now 35 or 45, and there's lots of reason to feel because there's someone loving nearby, or there's you've got children or whatever. And therefore, we need to say thank you to the younger self, and then we can move on. But shame is not going to do it. To wag a finger and go, oh, another one who's afraid of intimacy. No one ever changed like that.
Yeah, the realization that doing that internally, being a tyrant to yourself also isn't necessarily the best way to encourage you into behavior change, whipping yourself into submission.
Yeah. But also, it's missing the logic of why you're doing what you're doing. As I say, so much of what we do as adults makes no sense even to us. Why am I worried every morning? Again, ask yourself the question. It's a key question for your viewers, listeners. When did the current behavior, which now doesn't seem to make sense, when did it once make sense? In what circumstances did this pattern develop, this pattern that is now, inverted commas, mad or destructive or boring or counterproductive? When did it make sense? And if you can start to see a logic, and there always will be one, I would suggest, there almost always will be one. There will be a moment when to feel anxious every morning was bound up with your safety and your survival to the next stage of life. So if you can recover contact with what that stage was, you will then be in a position to honor the defensive strategy, but also say goodbye to it.
What are some of the best and worst ways to tell somebody that it's over in a relationship?
Look, one of the worst ways is not to explain at all why something has come to feel necessary. In other words, just running away and leaving someone no sense, because that then leaves the person to imagine everything. And most of our imaginations are dark places in this regard. In other words, we think that someone hates us boundlessly, or is trying to humiliate us, or deliberately wanted to be cruel to us, or etc. And in many, many cases, I venture to say most cases, when someone leaves someone, it isn't those things. It's the truth is better than we think. It's still tough. It's very, very tough. Those attachment ruptures in everyone's life, they're some of the most painful things we will ever have to go through. To build a life with someone and then see that life disappear. I mean, we need space to mourn. In Judaism, when someone dies, lose a spouse, you're allowed a year of mourning. You wear black, and you're allowed a year of mourning, where not too much is expected of you, both professionally and personally. You can go a bit mad, and that's all right. Everyone looks after you. They know you're in mourning. We kind of need that when we're heartbroken, when we're serious, because we're dealing with something that is, from an emotional point of view, as serious. This is as serious I mean, this literally is a loss. Someone has died. And so we need that space. So to come back to your question, how to break up, to be able to explain diplomatically, kindly, generously, some of the real reasons why. And as the person who's leaving, not to feel that those reasons, not to be ashamed of those reasons. People feel relationships don't have to go on forever. Sometimes relationships have a sell-by date. They are there. They were formed for a particular purpose, unconscious, to carry us to a next stage. And maybe that stage has come to an end for someone. And we can explain that. We can try and, verbalize that. But also clarity. And sometimes people try to be kind in ways that end up being very, very cruel. I think, there needs to be healing, doesn't there? There needs to be a break that's marked and honored so that two people can recover.